Hello there.
The room is quiet, but not the comforting kind of quiet. It's the kind that hums softly in the background, like a distant echo you can't quite place. A dim light spills from your phone screen, illuminating your face just enough to remind you that it's late, and somehow, still not late enough to sleep. Outside, the world feels paused. Maybe there's a faint sound of traffic passing by, or the occasional whisper of wind brushing against the window. Everything continues, gently, without asking anything from you. You scroll. Messages from people you care about. Conversations that should feel warm, familiar, safe. You read their words, maybe even reply, but something feels off. Like you're present, but only in fragments. Like you're there, but not entirely. And it's strange, isn't it? Because these are your people. The ones you laugh with. The ones who know your stories, your habits, your favorite songs. The ones you should feel closest to. Yet, in moments like this, there's a quiet distance you can't explain. It's not loud. It doesn't demand attention. It just sits there, gently, almost politely, like a guest who refuses to leave. You start to wonder if something's wrong. Not with them, but with you. Why does it feel like you're watching your own life from just a step outside? Why does connection sometimes feel like something you can see, but not fully touch? And maybe the hardest part is this. You're not alone. And yet, somehow, you still feel lonely. Maybe it's because being around people isn't the same as being seen. We often think closeness is measured by time. How often we talk, how long we've known each other, how many memories we've shared. But sometimes, connection isn't about proximity. It's about presence. And presence is a fragile thing. It slips through the smallest cracks. It's like sitting at a table full of food, yet still feeling hungry. Everything you need is technically there, laid out in front of you. But something is missing, something you can't quite name. And no matter how much you try to convince yourself that it should be enough, the emptiness lingers quietly. Part of it comes from the roles we play. Around the people we love, we become versions of ourselves that feel acceptable. The easygoing one, the listener, the funny one, the I'm fine version. Not because we are pretending, but because it's easier, safer. We learn, slowly, that certain parts of us are more welcome than others. So we edit ourselves. We trim the heavier thoughts. We soften the edges of our struggles. We choose words that won't worry anyone too much. And over time, without realizing it, we create a distance, not between us and them, but between us and our own truth. And that distance can feel incredibly lonely. There's also this quiet expectation we carry, that the people who love us should just know. That they should notice the subtle changes in our tone, the pauses in our laughter, the things we don't say. But people aren't mind readers. They're living inside their own worlds, just as complex and overwhelming as ours. So the silence grows. Not because love is missing, but because understanding hasn't fully arrived. And here's the gentle truth. Feeling this way doesn't mean something is broken. It doesn't mean your relationships are shallow or that you're too much or not enough. It just means you're human, trying to be known, while still learning how to be seen. I remember one night that didn't feel like anything special at first. We were all sitting together in a small cafe, the kind with warm yellow lights and slightly chipped wooden tables. There was a soft hum of music in the background, something acoustic, something gentle enough to fade behind our voices. Cups clinked lightly against saucers. Someone laughed a little too loudly at a joke that wasn't even that funny, and the rest of us followed, like we always do. I was there, smiling, nodding, even adding a few comments here and there. If someone had looked at me from across the room, they would have thought I was completely fine, maybe even happy. But I remember this strange moment when everything slowed down. It happened in the middle of a conversation I wasn't fully listening to. My eyes drifted for a second, just a second, and I started noticing the smallest details. The way the condensation slid down my glass, the faint crack on the edge of the table, the sound of a spoon stirring, over and over again, in someone's cup. And then it hit me. This quiet, almost invisible feeling, like I wasn't really there. Not physically, I was sitting right between them. But emotionally, it felt like there was a thin sheet of glass separating me from everything else. I could see them, hear them, even respond to them. But I couldn't fully reach them, and they couldn't fully reach me. I remember someone asking me a question. I blinked, forced a small smile, and answered quickly, something simple, something easy. They nodded, moved on, and the conversation continued without pause. And for a brief moment, I wondered what would happen if I said what I was actually feeling. If I told them, hey, I don't know why, but I feel kind of distant right now. But I didn't, because it felt too heavy, too out of place in a room filled with light laughter and casual stories. I didn't want to shift the mood. I didn't want to be that person. So I stayed quiet in the ways that matter. I kept smiling, kept listening, kept being the version of me that fit neatly into the moment. And when we finally left, when the night slowly unraveled and everyone went their separate ways, I remember walking alone under the dim streetlights, feeling this lingering emptiness I couldn't explain. It wasn't that I didn't enjoy being with them. It was just that a part of me never really arrived. It took me a while to understand that moments like that weren't signs of something failing, but something asking. Not loudly, not urgently, just quietly, in the background, like a soft pull you almost ignore. Because maybe that feeling, the distance, the slight disconnection, isn't there to isolate us. Maybe it's there to point towards something we've been gently avoiding. I started to realize that loneliness doesn't always come from a lack of people. Sometimes, it comes from a lack of honesty with ourselves. Not the dramatic kind of honesty, where everything is exposed all at once, but the smaller kind. The kind where you admit, even just yourself, I don't feel fully here right now. And somehow, that changes things. Not immediately. Not in a way that suddenly fixes everything. But it softens the experience. It turns loneliness from something confusing into something understandable. I also began to see that being known isn't something that just happens to us. It's something that unfolds, slowly, in the spaces where we allow ourselves to be a little more real than we're used to. Not all at once. Not perfectly. Just a little more. Maybe it's in the way you pause before saying, I'm fine, and consider whether that's actually true. Or in the moments when you let a conversation go slightly deeper than what's comfortable, even if your voice feels a little unfamiliar doing it. And sometimes, even that feels like too much. So you don't force it. Because there's also a quiet kind of peace in simply acknowledging where you are, in accepting that connection ebbs and flows, that some nights will feel full and others will feel strangely distant, even with the same people, in the same places. It doesn't mean the love isn't real. It doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It might just mean that you're still learning how to arrive, not just in a room full of people, but within yourself. Maybe, in the end, this feeling isn't something we need to fight so hard. Maybe it's okay that some moments feel a little out of reach, that even in rooms filled with laughter and familiar faces, there are parts of us that stay quiet, waiting. Because those quiet parts aren't empty. They're just unheard. And perhaps loneliness, in its softest form, is not here to remind us of what we lack, but to gently guide us back to ourselves, to the parts we've set aside, the thoughts we've silenced, the feelings we've learned to carry alone. There's nothing wrong with you for feeling this way. Not when you're surrounded by people. Not when you're supposed to feel happy. Not even when you can't fully explain it. You're just human, moving through connection in the only way you know how, learning as you go. And maybe that's enough for now. Maybe you don't have to force yourself to feel completely present all the time. Maybe it's okay to arrive slowly, to take your time, to let yourself be a little unfinished, a little in between. Because even in those quiet, distant moments, you're still here, still feeling, still trying, still capable of being known. And maybe, one day, without even realizing it, you'll look around, and instead of feeling like you're standing just outside the moment, you'll feel like you finally, gently, come home. And until then, isn't it comforting to know that even this quiet loneliness is still a form of connection to yourself?
Thank you for listening, and see you in the next story.